This is a matter of life and death. One wrong move, and Oslon will kill me. Just then, Oslon suddenly walked toward Vivian. She turned and smiled awkwardly. The Crown Prince is quite mischievous, isn't he? Right? Oslon suddenly leaned on Vivian's shoulder. Her gaze fell on his bloody shoulder. Isn't this? Is that blood? After a moment, Vivian screamed, "Wake up, Oslon!" Blood was staining his chest. She couldn't help but feel a little resentful. Goodness, how could you do this to someone? Oslon said weakly, "It's fine. I'm used to it." Vivian frowned slightly. It seems my premonition was real. I can't help but feel guilty. Now I should do what I can. Then she proposed, "Take off your clothes, Oslon." He exclaimed in surprise. Huh? Vivian explained with dissatisfaction. "I have to give you first aid and change your clothes." She didn't forget to reassure him, "Don't worry, I won't call anyone else." Then Oslon calmly suggested, "Then why don't you help me take them off?" Vivian almost screamed, "Me?" He began to groan. "It hurts when I move, so I can't take them off myself." Seeing this, she had no choice but to compromise. Then it seems there's no other choice. Vivian kept telling herself, "Okay, focus. If I accidentally touch his wound, he'll get angry." She moved carefully, little by little. Meanwhile, a blush appeared on Oslon's cheeks. Vivian looked at him with a pained heart. "It's even more serious than I thought." She suggested worriedly, "Maybe it's best to call the royal physician." Oslon suddenly refused. "No, just you is enough." He lowered his voice. "I don't need anyone else." Vivian thought to herself, he's being more vigilant than usual again. Anyone here could report to the Crown Prince. She carefully took out the disinfectant. "Now I'm going to clean the wound." Seeing Oslon groan, Vivian chided him with dissatisfaction. "Endure it. It'll be over soon." He suddenly spoke. "I seem to always show you my weakness." Oslon moved closer. "Aren't you tired of me yet?" Hearing this, she comforted him softly. "Please don't say that. Everyone has moments of weakness, and it's right to accept help from others at times like these." For some reason, Oslon's difficult and lonely childhood reminded her of her own. "I know what it's like to bear everything alone. That's why he seems even more pitiful to me." Meanwhile, he reached out his hand to her. "Then, will you stay by my side, Vivian?" Oslon hugged Vivian tightly, his voice sounding like he was sobbing. "Even if I'm not perfect." She chuckled lightly, of course. But in her heart, she was thinking, "For now, I'll go along with him." It feels like what he needs most right now is reassurance. Once we get back to Blackford, he'll go back to his usual self. He'll forget all about this, right? In a mansion, gray shrouded everything. Vivian's father had suddenly disappeared one night without a word, and was eventually found dead on a mountain. The cause of death was said to be an accident from a fall. His funeral was held privately, with only a few family members in attendance. She looked at the portrait with a blank expression, feeling no stir in her heart. Although it was a funeral, no one cried, and I, once again, did not shed a single tear. Even so, some suspicions about his death still lingered in my mind. My brother, who had originally planned to return to the academy, suddenly found himself having to inherit the ducal title, which made him feel very awkward. Fortunately, Oslon, with his extensive experience, provided a lot of support, allowing the succession process to go smoothly. Iris finally joined the family officially. Thinking of this, Vivian smiled. "That's right. All in all, things turned out well for everyone." "Then why is it only me?" She was seen rushing forward, her hair flying in the wind. A question mark formed in Vivian's mind. Living such a hard life, with constant killing, why am I so distressed? Let's go back to yesterday morning. Just then, she was surrounded by a group of maids. Then Vivian looked somewhere in surprise. She reached out to touch her skin, feeling a little confused inside. "There's something on my chest. What could it be?" Immediately after, Vivian turned around in a hurry and asked eagerly, "Emma, do you see a white mark on my chest?" She replied with a doubtful expression, "Yes." Seeing this, Vivian quickly gestured, "Look closely at the left side." Emma's attitude suddenly changed, and she looked annoyed. "I don't see anything. Can you pull your dress up?" Hearing this, Vivian's face fell. She comforted herself. Maybe it's too faint for Emma to see. But why do I have this? There was a similar mark in the novel, but the color and shape were different from mine. That mark was so deep that the heroine had to wear dresses that covered her chest. Mine actually looks more like the one Oslon had in the cave. Thinking of this, Vivian couldn't hide her curiosity. Does Oslon know about this mark? Even if he did, it wouldn't change anything. I can't just ask something so suspicious, right? But here I go again, my head full of these foolish thoughts. Honestly, just then, a voice came from the crack in the door. I believe staying quiet is key. Vivian immediately pressed her ear to the door to eavesdrop. Dylan's voice came through. Yes, our surveillance is also watching those outside. Try to get close to the inside. Oslon reminded him sternly, be more thorough, Dylan. He replied softly, then asked in confusion, understood. But are you really going to do that? Oslon didn't answer. He turned away. Dylan continued to add, I understand your intentions, but this is very risky. He lowered his voice, which trembled slightly. In the worst-case scenario, the young lady could die. Just then, a sound was heard. Dylan turned around warily. Wait. He walked quickly to the door and shouted, is anyone there? The door opened to an empty space outside. Dylan immediately closed the door. He quickly reported, no one, Your Highness. Meanwhile, Vivian peeked out with a dazed expression. What are they talking about? I might die. A terrible thought flashed through her mind. Oslon is finally going to get rid of me. Vivian's facial muscles twitched slightly from shiver. She couldn't help but feel a little resentful. I showed him kindness and didn't expect anything in return. But how could he forget everything I've done for him? Then Vivian shut her eyes tightly. She pressed her lips together. In that moment, her chest suddenly ached dully. I thought we had gotten a little closer at the mansion, but I was too naive. This means I have to get rid of this pentagram without Oslon knowing. Is there really no other way than to find him? Jesus, the grand magus from the original story. He is the leader of the mages guild and the one who helps the heroine awaken her powers. She focused her thoughts. Maybe he knows something about this pentagram. He's a mysterious person and hard to find, but thanks to the original story, I already know his location. Thinking of this, Vivian immediately made a plan. Finding him isn't the problem. I just need to wait for a chance to slip out alone. The next day, Oslon was standing properly beside her on the stone ground. Vivian thought to herself, of course, he wouldn't let me go out alone. It's just a normal outing, right? He was wearing a military uniform, a long sword at his side, and that intimidating expression on his face. Oslon suddenly spoke, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. I've booked out all the places we're going today, so no one will disturb us, Vivian. However, Vivian's heart was not at ease. She shivered subconsciously. That's what every murderer says. Anyway, I guess my only hope is that I'm close to Jesus' guild. An opportunity like this won't come again. I have to get away from him quickly. After hesitating for a moment, Vivian bravely voiced her thoughts. Oslon, I saw a shop I'd like to visit. Do you mind if I go alone? As expected, Oslon immediately refused. It's not safe for you to go alone. Let's go together. Vivian feigned embarrassment, muttering in her throat, but it's a bit embarrassing to go with a man. Facing his frozen expression, Vivian said bluntly, it's a lingerie shop, you see. Hearing this, Oslon immediately compromised. It seems I was being inconsiderate. Go ahead, Vivian. She giggled happily, really? And with that, Vivian turned and ran off. Then let's meet at the restaurant in 20 minutes. He called out helplessly, wait, Vivian, what about the maids? A few seconds later, Oslon was still frozen in place. He stared blankly at the empty space before him. She was gone. At an antique stall on the other side, just then, Vivian squatted down, panting. I'm here. She looked up at the sign and silently confirmed. The sign is emerald green, just like in the original story. This is it. Jesus must be inside. As Vivian's hand touched the doorknob, she kept reassuring herself. Okay, calm down. A creaking sound was heard. Vivian's eyes lit up. She looked around the room. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. But just then, a figure slowly approached Vivian. Her expression turned serious. This is a mage's guild. Illusion magic has become an instinct. Anyone who judges by appearances will be fooled. Just then, Jesus suddenly appeared and asked kindly, this isn't a place for a respectable lady like you. Are you lost? Then Jesus looked directly into her eyes, a sinister smile playing on his lips. Seeing him, Vivian smiled subconsciously. Looks like I've come to the right place. In that instant, an image appeared clearly in her mind. It was Jesus. Back to Jesus. He still maintained a friendly expression. Seeing that Vivian didn't answer, Jesus repeated the question, are you lost? Meanwhile, an idea began to form in her mind. Without a doubt, this is Jesus. He's disguised right now, but I know how to make him reveal himself by singing the Empire's lullaby. After a moment, Vivian sang in a voice as clear as water. It is said that demons appear on the night of the red moon. Meanwhile, the corners of Jesus' mouth lifted involuntarily. He continued excitedly, "That's right. So whatever you do, don't open your eyes." Suddenly, a surge of spiritual power rushed toward Vivian. Just then, Jesus' tone suddenly changed. "You are not a mage." He appeared with a completely new look, his voice cold. "So what brings you here?" She looked at Jesus suspiciously. "We're suddenly in another place. Is this the power of the Grand Magus?" Without much thought, Vivian quickly replied, "I want you to look at the magic circle on my body." He repeated with a doubtful expression, "A magic circle? But I don't sense anything." In an instant, Jesus' expression changed. He looked at her with concern. "What kind of mind control magic is this?" Seeing Jesus' reaction, Vivian asked worriedly, "Is it that bad?" He took a step closer. "It's worse than bad." Jesus moved closer, stared at Vivian, and said loudly, "This is very powerful black magic." Jesus' gaze moved to her chest, so powerful that once activated, it will shatter your heart and kill you. As he spoke, he narrowed his eyes. "You don't seem surprised at all." Usually, this kind of news would make someone very agitated. Contrary to her appearance, Vivian was practically screaming inside. "I'm in a complete panic inside," she said wearily, "because a grand magus like you surely knows a solution." Hearing this, Jesus chuckled lightly. "You're quite sharp. Fortunately, I have two pieces of good news." He raised his hand in the air to gesture. "First, your magic circle is not yet complete. Black magic circles are usually deep red, but yours is not." As he spoke, Jesus added with emphasis, "If I destroy the structure first, then we can solve the problem." Vivian replied quickly, "I understand." "Then please hurry." Suddenly, he placed his fingertip in front of her, his voice sounding like a summons from the underworld. Second, Jesus frowned and continued, "That magic circle is suppressing your tuberculosis. Black magic is extremely possessive. It hates for its target to die from anything other than itself." He smiled nonchalantly. "You can choose to die from tuberculosis or from that black magic." On her side, Vivian looked very displeased. "Hey," she replied calmly, "I want you to destroy its structure, Jesus. I'll give you any reward you want." Jesus repeated excitedly, "A reward? I like the sound of that." He threw his head back and laughed, "But money isn't my only motivation." Then Jesus took out a dagger and placed it in front of her. "What I want is the pure blood of the Eleanor family." Jesus walked toward Vivian, his shadow falling over her. "Oh, I have your permission, even if it means harming your noble body." At this, she frowned slightly. "He knows something about my lineage." But Vivian suddenly snatched the knife from Jesus' hand. She said resolutely, "I don't like to disappoint you, Jesus." Vivian slowly brought the knife closer and said in a low voice, "But I don't have time to hesitate over this." Without hesitation, Vivian sliced her hand open deeply. Blood gushed out, and her voice was firm again. "I will give you the blood of an Eleanor family member." Bright red blood flowed down as Vivian looked at Jesus coldly. "Is this enough?" He laughed, his eyes twinkling with delight. Jesus staggered a bit, a mad laugh bursting from his lips. "My lady, you are truly fearless." After laughing heartily, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "Very good." Jesus' voice sounded like a curse. "It's a deal." Then Vivian quickly ran out. She kept thinking, "I've already cast a healing spell on the wound, but there's no way I can hide it from the Grand Duke. A magic swordsman of his level will definitely be able to sense the residual magic." Before this, Jesus hadn't forgotten to remind her that deciphering the structure would take time. "So be patient." Vivian couldn't help but cry out, as if lamenting, "Everything is so tiring." Over on one side, Oslon was sitting motionless. She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. "Oslon? He was waiting for me." Dylan looked at Oslon, his eyes darting around as if testing the waters. "Are you worried, Your Highness?" He said coldly, "Do I look worried?" He forced a smile. "Yes, you looked extremely threatening when you smiled just now." Dylan lowered his voice to soothe him. "It will be fine, Your Highness. You've been diligently practicing the dance I taught you." He began to instruct, demonstrating each move with his body. Approach her with charming dance steps, pretend to offer a rose, and fill her with anticipation. Finally, Dylan said firmly, like a love expert, "I guarantee it will be a successful proposal." Oslon lowered his head, his expression cold. "Are you sure Vivian said she likes this stuff?" He replied quickly, "Of course." Dylan recounted excitedly, I pretended to ask her about this kind of dance for a friend of mine, and she said she appreciates the effort and that she likes it. As he spoke, he chuckled lightly. So you will definitely succeed. In that instant, her name repeated over and over in his mind. Vivian, I know you're still resisting our engagement, but I can't delay any longer. Even after being examined by the most famous doctors, your condition hasn't improved. So the only way to keep you alive by my side is to use that mark. When the ritual is complete, the pact that allows a magical beast to share its lifespan with its mate will take effect, which means Vivian cannot die before I do. Dylan interjected, his voice laced with worry. What if you die? In the worst-case scenario, the young lady could die too. He almost shouted, this is too risky. Oslon's thoughts churned in his mind. Dylan is right. Surrounded by countless enemies, I can't deny this is a risky choice. But I can't just stand by and watch, hoping Vivian endures everything alone. That's why we must hold the engagement ceremony as soon as possible. Suddenly, Vivian's voice interrupted his thoughts. Sorry, Oslon. She bowed, panting, I'm late. He stood up worriedly. Vivian, did you run here because you didn't want to keep me waiting? Oslon frowned slightly and quickly reached out to support Vivian. I should have gone to get you myself. She forced a smile. I'm fine. He looked directly into Vivian's eyes. No, you're not. Sit down and rest now. Just then, Oslon's gaze fell on her bandaged hand. He couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. What's this injury, Vivian? It's faintly emitting magic. Vivian swallowed hard. He noticed right away. I have to make up an excuse. She began to explain, trying to make her voice sound natural. Something happened on the way here. A woman stopped me and asked for help. Vivian's expression was serious. In the process, I got a minor injury, and she healed me with magic. Oslon remained suspicious, his face dark. What happened? She continued her story, trying to make it sound interesting. That's right. She said someone was hitting on her with terrible dance moves and asked me to help her escape. As she spoke, Vivian clicked her tongue in disapproval. It was so bad. He came over dancing with his shoulders shrugged, then pretended to give her a rose, and then stepped aside. The scene was extremely bizarre. Saying this, she couldn't help but laugh. Don't you think she's pitiful? If it were me, I would have run away long ago. Just then, Oslon lowered his voice. Vivian. She smiled awkwardly, present. His gaze locked onto Vivian, his body pressing close to hers. Tell me the truth. The entire space seemed to fall still. Vivian continued her act. She giggled, of course. I'm telling the truth. Seeing this, Oslon's expression softened a little, and he replied softly, Is that so? I see. Oslon turned to the side. I'll go inside and have them bring out the food. Vivian breathed a sigh of relief. Great, it worked. She couldn't help but feel a little confused. But Oslon, why was Dylan dragged away? He replied calmly, just some work. Contrary to her worries, the outing with Oslon ended with a surprisingly peaceful dinner. Before I could even catch my breath, a new storm began to brew. The summer hunting trip organized by His Highness the Crown Prince would be held in the sacred forest in a few days. The presence of you two is an honor for the royal family, and we greatly look forward to that day. Her hand clutched the paper tightly, screaming inwardly, Johannes. Vivian shut her eyes tightly, her heart filled with resentment. The sacred forest, the crown prince, is finally going to make his move. The sacred forest, that sacred place where the first emperor rests, a private place never opened to anyone outside the royal family. The problem is, the sacred forest is filled with anti-demon power, which is the worst possible place for Oslon, who suffers from the Astrath curse. Meanwhile, Oslon looked directly at her. Vivian, are you all right? You don't look well. He wore a sad expression. Maybe you should stay home. Seeing this, Vivian tried to raise her voice. Come on, how can I stay home when you're attending the event? In her heart, a thought arose. What's worse is that the deliberate poisoning of the queen happens right before the hunting festival. Because Oslon doesn't have an alibi, he gets framed. Knowing this, how can I stay at the mansion? My tuberculosis medicine is in danger. Just then, a guard announced loudly, we're almost there. Vivian's eyes widened in surprise. This is. Her eyes were completely immersed in the mountain forest scenery. The sacred forest. Vivian gently touched her chest. She smiled. I feel like I can breathe more easily. Can the anti-demon effect also alleviate my tuberculosis? Good. I'm going to take this chance and try to overcome it first. I have to keep Oslon away from the queen. Vivian smiled and bowed slightly. About to leave. Oslon, I'm going to the camp. See you later. Suddenly, he reached out to her. Wait. Oslon's eyes were pleading, as if trying to see through Vivian's calm exterior. Aren't you going to give me a good luck kiss? She was startled, her face blushing like a rose in the sun. What are you talking about? Saying this, Vivian flusteredly turned her head to look at the couples. She looked around at the people who were passionately kissing. Thinking of this, everyone around Vivian turned to look at him. That's right, if I just leave like this, Oslon will be embarrassed. In that case, I have no choice. She reached out, cupped Oslon's cheek, and gave him a light kiss. In that instant, his cheeks turned as red as a tomato. In the romantic mountain forest, the two embraced affectionately. After a moment, Vivian's lips left Oslon's cheek. Her voice was as faint as a breeze. Well then, good luck, Oslon. He called her name softly, as if wanting to hold on to that moment. Vivian, Oslon said firmly, I will respond to you with the best prey from this hunt. The scene changes to an extremely luxurious room. Vivian couldn't help but marvel. No wonder it's so big. This used to be a mansion, but people who aren't participating in the hunt stay here. I wonder if the queen has arrived. In a small corner, a woman turned in disgust. Isn't that Countess Amelia? The person next to her speculated excitedly. It seems she plans to attend this year's hunt. Meanwhile, Vivian subconsciously looked in a certain direction. Wait, what? Vivian saw Amelia from a distance and couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Countess Amelia. In the original story, she was the real culprit who tried to poison the queen and frame Oslon. She's not even trying to be discreet. Truly befitting of the Emperor's mistress, her nerve is something else. Fortunately, everything seems to be proceeding according to the original story. At this rate, Amelia will definitely put the poison from that paper into a champagne glass and bring it to the queen. So I just need to pretend to bump into a servant and secretly switch the glasses before they make their move. Then I'll have to slip away. Just then, a piercing cry rang out. Her Majesty the Queen and His Highness the Crown Prince have arrived. She immediately turned to look back. They're here. The Queen squinted at Vivian. We meet again, Miss Vivian. Seeing this, she immediately curtsied. Your Majesty. Johannes stepped forward. Are you well, Miss Vivian? Meanwhile, Vivian felt a little uneasy. How strange. I can't believe the Queen approached me first. The Queen asked curiously, are you also participating in this year's hunt? Vivian lowered her voice and replied respectfully, yes, but I plan to stay here today. Hearing this, Johannes interjected again, that's wonderful. Vivian responded blankly, yes. He said calmly, it so happens that my mother's servants have all gone to the hunt today. If you could stay by my mother's side in their place, I would be very relieved. Vivian turned and bowed respectfully. Although I am still lacking, I will do my best today. Meanwhile, the Queen was staring at Vivian, her expression slightly awkward. There's something on my face? After a moment, she waved her hand. You don't look well again. I've already called for the royal physician, so please allow him to examine you. Examine me? Vivian's mind was full of question marks. Why does she want him to examine me? The Queen's meaningful reminder suddenly echoed in Vivian's mind. I will continue to watch you. She felt a chill run down her spine involuntarily. Could it be that she called the doctor to see when Oslon's fiancé would die? Because I've lasted longer than she expected. Come to think of it, the heroine was greatly humiliated by the Queen in this very place. Is something terrible going to happen? Meanwhile, Pablo carefully extended the stethoscope toward Vivian, his voice low. My name is Pablo, and I will be examining you today. Now, if you please, I need to listen to your lungs. She tried to resist inwardly. No, I can't. Vivian quickly averted her gaze. Wait, what is Amelia doing? Her servant is walking this way. At this rate, switching the glasses will be impossible. The royal physician is watching me on one side, and the servant is approaching the Queen on the other. I'm in real trouble. The more Vivian thought, the more confused she became. What should I do? Think, Vivian, there must be a way out. In that instant, her body practically froze. After a moment of silence, Pablo's voice was heard again. Miss Vivian. She looked carefully at his chest. Can I use this? I'm going to give it a try. Without hesitation, Vivian reached out and took the sharp metal piece, questioning him sternly. What are these pointed tweezers for? Pablo hurriedly explained, it's just a medical instrument used to examine the respiratory system. Vivian smiled faintly. So you plan to poke my nose with this? Seeing him still trying to explain, it might be uncomfortable, but it won't hurt, she said coldly. I refuse. What if they hurt me? Vivian quickly looked around. Good. I've caught everyone's attention. Let's put on a villainous act. Since I can't stop the poisoning myself, I'll have someone else do it." Vivian shouted, her voice echoing throughout the hall. A maid over there jumped in surprise. "Yes, were you calling me?" She brought the tweezers close to the maid with a serious expression, as if handing over contraband. "Yes, you hold these tweezers." She trembled slightly. "Miss Vivian, I have to deliver this wine to the queen." Vivian said in a commanding voice, "Just for a moment. I just need to check if these tweezers are also harmful to me." As she spoke, she chuckled lightly. "This thing was made for me by my brother. It has the ability to detect if there is anything harmful to me nearby." A nobleman whispered, trying to cover his mouth, "It's that villainess from the Eleanor family." The person next to him looked disdainful. "She hasn't caused trouble for a long time, but she's at it again." Vivian shrugged slightly, a provocative smile on her lips. "You all saw it, right? I didn't touch that wine glass." After a moment, she took out a crystal and urged, "Check it." The maid, feeling everyone's eyes on her, cried out in a panic, "Please let me go." Meanwhile, Johannes's gaze fell on her. The whole hall began to descend into panic. Whispers arose. "What just happened?" Pablo looked at Vivian in terror. "That's impossible," one of them said hesitantly. "The thing turned black, which means there's a problem with the tweezers." He tried to explain. "Impossible. There must be some misunderstanding." Vivian turned around coldly. "A misunderstanding?" Under her scrutiny, Pablo said forcefully, "You just said it could detect anything around that could harm you, right? So, maybe it wasn't reacting to my tweezers." She curled her lips slightly. "That's right, Pablo." Vivian smiled meaningfully. "Even if you're right, what do you think it's reacting to?" Meanwhile, the maid's body was trembling. Faced with her strange reaction, he couldn't help but feel a little confused. "It's the maid," Pablo then accused openly. "That maid is very suspicious, especially that glass of wine." Vivian showed a skeptical look. "Are you saying there's a problem with this wine?" He said calmly, "I think it's worth a look." She brought the glowing object closer, and the black light grew deeper. "You're right. This item is reacting more strongly to the wine than to the tweezers." A lady covered her mouth and exclaimed, "My goodness, was it poison?" She said she was going to serve that wine to the Empress, right? Johannes's voice rang out powerfully, shaking the entire hall. "Tie this maid up at once." He looked coldly at the wrongdoer. "I will interrogate her myself." The maid cried out as she was dragged away. "No, I'm innocent, Your Highness." Vivian thought to herself, "I think this matter is more or less resolved. Now is a good chance for me to slip away. I've been here longer than planned, so I have to hurry." According to the original plot, Oslon's magic will erupt around dusk, so I must stop him from entering the former emperor's tomb. Just then, Johannes suddenly spoke. "You've impressed me very much, Miss Vivian." Her body immediately froze, stiff as a board. Vivian turned around, trying to hide her nervousness. "Why is that, Your Highness?" His voice was full of meaning, your agility and humility. Johannes looked behind her. "Not only did you prevent the poisoning, but you also pretended to generously give the credit to someone else while modestly stepping back yourself." She couldn't help but feel a chill. As expected, it wasn't easy to fool this great villain. Perhaps it was better to be honest now. After a moment, Vivian bowed and said in a low voice, "Pardon my rudeness, Your Highness." Johannes waved his hand to reassure her. "Don't be nervous. I know you're not the culprit." He suddenly lowered his voice. "It's a pity. You're too good a woman for Oslon." After saying that, Johannes calmly turned away. She watched his back in confusion. "Pardon my rudeness, Your Highness." Vivian stared at him with a puzzled expression. Meanwhile, Johannes quietly observed her. But he sneered, "If you go looking for Oslon, you'll soon find that your fiancé is nothing but prey." On the other side, the man said in a heavy voice, "He can't have gone far. We must capture him alive." Meanwhile, Oslon clutched his chest in pain. "Damn it, if I touch that holy relic, I'll no longer be able to control my magic. I made thorough preparations for the sacred forest and the consequences of anti-magic, but I never expected them to use the former emperor's sword. To think they'd use a holy relic to attack me. Are you that desperate to catch me, Johannes?" Afterwards, he couldn't help but groan. "I can't go on." Oslon's body collapsed to the ground. He wiped his mouth with his hand, his breathing heavy, as if about to let out a roar. "I can't walk anymore. I need a rest." Oslon's gaze swept over the trampled ground, his beastly instincts sounding a warning. There were signs of pursuit, a path leading to the former emperor's tomb deep in the forest, a place where only direct blood relatives of the royal family were allowed to enter. If I lose to them, the only way is to hide in the tomb. But I can't withstand the anti-magic power in the tomb, and I'll have to wander in my beast form for a long time. Suddenly, Oslon stopped. Her name echoed again, Vivian. I'm sorry. I intended to return to you sooner. But it seems he looked into the void in despair. I'll have to postpone it. After a while, only footprints could be seen everywhere on the ground. Meanwhile, Vivian pulled hard on the horse's reins. She looked ahead, unconcealable anxiety gradually showing on her face. The sun is about to set, but there's still no sign of Oslon. If everything goes according to the original plot, Oslon will lose control of his magic because of Johannes's trap. He will turn into a black lion in front of his loyal subordinates. Then, he will have no choice but to eliminate them. I must do everything I can to prevent this tragedy. Just then, Vivian showed a panicked expression. She hastily pulled the reins tight, and the horse stopped immediately. Vivian's gaze followed the deep hoof prints in the mud. The tracks were fading, but there were clearly traces of animals and people. But this path led directly to the former emperor's tomb. His name escaped her lips like a plea, Oslon. The scene shifts to the deepest part of the forest. In front of the former emperor's tomb, she thought to herself, if Oslon is here, he must have already transformed into his beast form and lost his reason. Vivian kept telling herself, I should be careful. Then she subconsciously turned her head to look back. Vivian looked at the dense bushes in confusion. What's that sound inside? Two bright red eyes gleamed. Faced with this sudden sight, her expression stiffened. Then Oslon suddenly roared, and his body lunged swiftly at Vivian. Immediately after, a sharp scream rang out. Vivian opened her mouth to groan, standing frozen like a statue. Am I really going to be eaten alive? After a moment of silence, she opened her eyes blankly. At this moment, Oslon was standing quietly beside Vivian. Immediately after, he lay down on the ground. Vivian watched as the huge lion tilted its head and blinked like a kitten, her gaze shifting from terror to bewilderment. What is he doing? Is it a pre-meal ritual? Although it looked no different from acting cute. That's right, Vivian's special beast-taming skill must have been activated. She chuckled softly, letting out a sigh of relief, as if she had just escaped the tiger's jaws, that I'm still alive. Hooray for Vivian. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds gathered, obscuring the sky. Suddenly, raindrops fell directly on Vivian's head, and she groaned subconsciously. It's cold. Vivian looked up at the sky. It's raining. What should I do? The sun is about to set, and the air will get colder. Oslon suddenly tugged at Vivian's clothes with his teeth. She looked at him curiously. What's wrong? Vivian tilted her head towards the door. You want to go in there? No, only direct descendants of the royal family can enter. She thought to herself, he seems to want to take shelter from the rain, but the sacred power here is too strong. It might harm him. We should find a place. Suddenly, Oslon rushed past Vivian. She shouted loudly, hey, my sword. Vivian couldn't help but sigh. Honestly, this big lion was extremely stubborn. She ran after him. This is no time for games. Seeing the situation, Vivian had to compromise. All right, but we have to leave here immediately. Inside, flames burned steadily in the air. Vivian looked at the flames and smiled subconsciously, right here. She didn't forget to remind him, it's a good thing I brought a torch. It's dark in here, so stay close to me. Then Vivian turned back to look at him in surprise. Oslon, she asked worriedly, what's wrong? Are you angry or... Vivian almost screamed, my goodness, you're bleeding so much. Her eyes were filled with worry. His condition was so bad that he was even bleeding. Even if Oslon insisted, I shouldn't have come here. Vivian stroked him gently. I'm sorry. It seems we should leave. Can you move? You can lean on me if you need to. She moved closer and hugged Oslon. It's okay. In an instant, his eyes lit up. Oslon suddenly lunged forward, and Vivian's thigh suddenly started bleeding. Seeing this, he reacted immediately, his eyes gleaming. Meanwhile, she stared blankly at Oslon. Black Lion, Vivian gave a bitter smile. Because of this, it's okay. I can heal it with magic. She reassured him again, so don't be scared. I'm fine. Hearing this, Oslon slowly walked towards Vivian. She held out her hand to him. Come a little closer. Vivian's gaze gradually turned to confusion. She called his name in terror. Black Lion. Oslon is going crazy. Facing the approaching beast, Vivian said in a trembling voice, Black Lion. Meanwhile, Oslon's consciousness began to awaken, and he resisted frantically. No, I'm going to hurt Vivian again. His claws were seen scratching restlessly at the ground. Immediately after, Oslon turned and ran away. She reached out to him. Wait, come back. Vivian immediately followed. She couldn't help but feel a little worried. He's heading straight for the tomb. Is he panicking? At that moment, her heart was screaming his name. Oslon. On this side, the group of people have been waiting for a long time, in a room with a very magnificent wooden door. Meanwhile, Vivian burst into the room, shouting, "Lion!" At that moment, Vivian's face froze, her eyes wide. She thought to herself, "How strange. I didn't feel anything when I was outside. Why do I suddenly feel unwell?" Vivian's gaze rested on the symbol pattern. Moreover, the symbol on the tomb ceiling. She looked around the room, the symbol of the Eleanor family. The sword that defeated the demon, the symbol of the Eleanor family, was granted as a mark of honor to the founder, who was a companion of the former emperor. She was the only one who believed in the emperor and fought alongside him. To see this symbol on the tomb, Vivian placed her hand on her chest. She kept thinking, I wonder if the emperor wanted to stay by his friend's side, even after death. She clutched the hem of her clothes, her heart filled with a little confusion. Why is my chest so tight? It's not a tuberculosis attack. Is it because I'm depressed from standing in front of someone else's grave? Just then, Oslon suddenly appeared and slowly walked towards Vivian. Seeing this, she smiled happily. "It's you? I'm glad you're back. It's too stuffy in here." Vivian swayed and enthusiastically persuaded. "Let's get out of here, Lion, or I'll go by myself." Then, her face suddenly showed a look of surprise, and she murmured, "Wait." Oslon was seen rushing towards the group of people. Just then, the man shouted in a deep voice, "Capture that black lion alive." Vivian turned her head to look behind her, her eyes wide, her heart racing, and her body tense like a fully drawn bowstring. What's happening? They want to capture Oslon alive? Are they Johannes's men? Have they been following me all this time? Oslon sensed it and saved me. She repeated it subconsciously, just like the incident in the cave. Vivian's hand quickly rested on the hilt of her sword. But if there was any difference, she lightly swung the sword in the air, her eyes fixed on the group of people. It was that this time, "I have a sword." At that moment, Vivian's voice was like thunder. "Move aside, kitty." Before the group could react, her body had already charged towards them. Vivian's eyes narrowed, a hidden resentment within them. The sound of the long sword slashing down made a chilling noise, and blood splattered. The man said in a trembling voice, "Who is she? Why didn't you deal with her sooner?" The person next to him answered hesitantly, "I didn't know she was such a good fighter." Seeing this, he hastily ordered, "Kill her. We can't leave any survivors." On this side, Vivian was frantically swinging her longsword. A thought crept into her subconscious. "Johannes, I know you're afraid of Oslon. That's why you're doing this." The fact that the Astaroth curse was passed to Oslon also means the power to restore the demon exists. If you kill Oslon, then you will bear the curse yourself. That's why you want to bind him with black magic and lock him up like a mummy. Vivian's heart grew more and more furious. Even though Oslon had done nothing wrong, he had never coveted the throne. Even Blackford, founded by Oslon and his allies, was just struggling to survive. After a long time, the sword in her hand dropped directly to the ground. Vivian lowered her head, surrounded by corpses. She panted, trying to suppress her anger. "The more I think about it, but the angrier I get. This special power isn't one-sided." Meanwhile, Oslon suddenly kissed Vivian's hand gently. She stroked him gently. "Have you calmed down now? I mean, Black Lion." Vivian said calmly, "I won't try to drive you out of here again. I know how stubborn you are." She then added, her tone low, but with a warning, "This isn't a good place. Even though it's raining and dark outside, you should really consider leaving." Vivian affirmed again, "But I will stay by your side." Because of that, her body suddenly swayed and fell to one side. Faced with this sudden sight, his eyes lit up. "Vivian!" Oslon screamed frantically in his subconscious, and "Oh, she's pushing herself too hard again." He looked at her in pain. "No, please open your eyes, Vivian." He only saw Vivian's mouth open slightly, then let out a soft breath. Seeing this, Oslon dared to breathe heavily. She had just fallen asleep. At that moment, he subconsciously looked at Vivian's face. Oslon lay down beside her, thinking, "I can endure it this way. Shall we spend the night here?" Vivian looks exhausted. Outside, the moonlight grew brighter and the stars twinkled. Meanwhile, Vivian giggled. "I tamed the lion. I'm going to show off to Alex." Oslon looked down at her face. He reached out to touch Vivian's body, his voice whispering, "I'm sorry, Vivian." Then, Oslon leaned down and gently kissed her cheek. "But it seems you can't." He then added, "I'm sorry, Vivian, but maybe you can't show off anymore. The curse is disappearing faster than I thought." After speaking, Oslon couldn't help but stare at Vivian again. He thanked her silently in his heart. "Thanks to you, this vicious curse has been alleviated. It's because you forgave me and didn't give up on me." Oslon gently held her hand and couldn't help but sigh. "So small. You were so petite and loyal. It makes me afraid I'll hurt you." but I also hope you won't turn your back on me. So I couldn't help but run away. I was too selfish. After hiding my identity and hurting you, I still feel the desire to build a deeper bond instead of being content with the status quo. That's right. The truth is I want your heart. I want to go as deep as possible. Oslon repeated again in his subconscious, I'm sorry, Vivian. I know I'll have to leave you one day, because you don't belong with a monster like me. But I can't bring myself to let you go. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight of the day filtered through the leaves. On this side, Vivian yawned. She stretched her shoulders and let out a long sigh that seems the ancestors were watching over me. Even though I was lying on the stone floor, I slept warmly. A bit tired, though. Vivian's gaze rested on the bodies. Anyway, she looked around. Where did Oslon go? He wasn't there when I woke up. His body hasn't fully recovered. I wonder if he's okay. Vivian's eyes were seen to be wide and shining. She stared intently at the person in front of her, calling Oslon's name at the same time. Vivian asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" She immediately covered her mouth. I have to pretend I don't know he turned into a black lion. Immediately after, Vivian changed the question. "Where did you go?" "I got lost looking for you yesterday." He replied with an awkward expression. "I'm sorry." Oslon tried to avoid eye contact, whispering, "I have no excuse, but..." She repeated in confusion. But he looked at her leg with concern. "You have a wound on your thigh. Are you okay?" Seeing this, Vivian immediately defended herself. "I must have accidentally fallen while looking for you yesterday." Oslon had a serious expression. "Do you think you can walk?" She sighed wearily. "Of course not. You don't use healing magic, do you, Oslon?" Hearing this, he nodded seriously. "I will learn." Oslon suddenly fumbled in his clothes. "But I have this." He tore off a part of his coat without hesitation. Immediately after, Oslon carefully bent down. He said softly, "We can't let it get infected, so let's do first aid like this." Oslon was seen gently stroking Vivian's calf. She lowered her head shyly. He was bandaging it carefully. Although he was unconscious in his black lion form, perhaps he was somewhat aware that he had caused this wound. At that moment, Vivian's mind started to signal, "It's so itchy." After a moment of silence, Oslon said, "There." She replied shyly, "Thank you, Oslon." He suddenly suggested, "Get on my back. I'll carry you back to the camp." She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. "What are you doing?" Then, Oslon gently lifted Vivian onto his back. Vivian leaned against Oslon with an awkward expression. "You don't have to do this. I can ride a horse." Hearing this, he replied calmly, "I lost the horse." She exclaimed in surprise, "What?" Seeing this, Oslon lowered his voice and said in a delicate tone, "After all, I make mistakes too. I'm human too." Oslon seemed ashamed. He lowered his head slightly, his voice trembling a little. "For some reason, I seem to make more mistakes when I'm around you." With self-reproach, Oslon emphasized every word. "I failed to keep my promise to you yesterday and let you wander alone in the forest." Meanwhile, Vivian subconsciously hugged him, Oslon. "But from suffering the curse to turning into a magical beast, none of it is your fault." Afterwards, Oslon suddenly changed the subject. "I have a secret you can't imagine, and that's why I was late." Vivian and I. A smile played on Vivian's lips. "So what if you have a secret?" Her voice sounded softly. "If it pains you, then don't say it. Sometimes keeping it to yourself for a while is the best way." Vivian then added, her tone somewhat playful, "Who knows, maybe if you hide it long enough, the lie will become the truth." Just then, Oslon couldn't help but smile. "How strange," he said softly, his gaze following Vivian's every move. "You seem to know exactly what I want to hear." A hint of embarrassment mixed with self-reproach flashed in her eyes. Her shoulders slumped slightly. "Oops, did I dig too deep?" Vivian hastily changed the subject. "Can we go a little faster?" He chuckled lightly. "I'll try." The scene shifts to Oslon's temporary camp. Inside, Oslon ordered, his voice sharp, "Call the royal physician quickly and prepare a hot bath for her." Another person replied swiftly, "Yes, Your Highness." After a moment of silence, Vivian looked embarrassed. "This isn't my camp." Seeing this, he turned and said calmly, "No, this is where we're staying." She screamed angrily in her mind. "Stubborn lion. If I don't get back to my camp soon, my brother will worry. Maybe he's already looking for me. This bed is so soft and comfortable. This is truly a camp worthy of royalty. Sorry, Alex. See you later. I'm staying here." Just then, Vivian's eyes widened, and she subconsciously exclaimed, "Wait." Vivian jumped off the bed, unable to help feeling a little suspicious. "Are you saying that for the entire hunting week, we're going to live together in this small room? We're going to sleep, bathe, and change clothes together?" Oslon said in a low voice, shrugging his shoulders slightly. "I can't bear to let someone as weak as you sleep in an outdoor camp." He turned to look around, then lowered his voice. "If you're uncomfortable, then I'll sleep on the sofa." Her heart felt a faint sense of gratitude. Oslon could have had this whole room to himself. He gave it to me because he was worried about my health. Thinking of this, Vivian couldn't help but feel regretful. I spoke without thinking. She lowered her head slightly, tidied her hair, her eyes awkward. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be wary of you. Maybe you want to take a bath too." Vivian trailed off. "You insisted on giving the room to me." Just like that, at that moment, Oslon suddenly called her name, Vivian. She answered swiftly, "Here." He gently reminded her, "Don't worry about me. Just relax." Because this room, Oslon paused, his eyes gauging her reaction, emphasizing every word, "is big enough for two." Faced with the warmth that spread, Vivian mumbled in her throat, "This room is big enough for two, is it?" Oslon called her name again in a gentle voice. "Vivian." He gently lifted Vivian's chin. "Are you satisfied with this arrangement?" She reached out and touched the bed again. "It's spacious enough for two to sleep." She said softly, "Yes, I think so." Seeing this, Oslon didn't forget to remind her, "If you don't like it here, just tell me." Vivian thought to herself, "Is he planning to sleep on the sofa?" After a moment, she answered briefly, "All right." Just then a shout came from inside, "Let go. Let me ask her myself." The servant replied in a hurried tone, "Please don't do that, Duke." The shout rang out again, "Move aside." Alex suddenly burst in. "Vivian, you're here." He questioned as soon as he arrived, "Is it true you canceled the engagement ceremony?" Faced with the sudden question, Vivian blinked a few times. She asked in confusion, "What ceremony?" Vivian turned to look at him. "I've never heard of it." "Oslon, what's he talking about?" After a moment, Vivian's voice was heard. She crossed her arms and questioned with a serious expression, "So Oslon was planning a surprise proposal?" Vivian continued helplessly, "And he was going to dance with roses, the thing Dylan mentioned." After saying that, she turned away in displeasure. "Are you kidding me?" "Oslon." Oslon approached, looking confused. "I can explain everything. That was... Alex shouted loudly, "Move aside, Dylan." Vivian frowned slightly. "I almost experienced the most embarrassing feeling in the Empire's history." After a moment, she turned away coldly. "Let's go, Alex." "Where's the camp?" He looked at her in confusion. "It's a long walk from here. Are you okay?" Seeing this, Dylan showed a worried expression. "Mississippi." Meanwhile, Oslon suddenly approached, his voice lingering. "Dylan." Oslon's face darkened, his voice sounding like the call of death. "It seems I've given you too much freedom, don't you think?" Dylan's scream echoed in the mansion. "I'm sorry." The fourth day of the hunting party at the Empress's resting place. Spoons and forks were neatly arranged on the dining table, along with a vase of flowers. Meanwhile, Johannes tilted his head slightly. He sneered, "Mother, you look to be in good spirits." The Empress smiled faintly. "Is that so?" "As you said, it seems I am quite satisfied." A flash of satisfaction crossed her face. "I've finally gotten that thorn in my side. Amelia, out of my sight." She thought she was superior just because she was the Emperor's mistress, but all of that was ruined by Miss Vivian. The Empress gently placed her teacup on the table. She thought to herself, "That's right." At that moment, her face appeared clearly in her subconscious. Miss Vivian Eleanor. At first, I thought she was nothing more than a spoiled child, relying only on her family's name. So I pushed Johannes's engagement proposal to Oslon, as if granting a favor. But thinking about how she proved herself to be so talented and humble, I realized I'd rather have her as the crown princess. Johannes tilted his head, his eyes gauging the Empress's reaction. It seems Mother has taken a liking to Miss Vivian as well. Hearing this, she didn't intend to hide it and smiled. The Empress said slowly, "I heard a foreign doctor has found a cure for tuberculosis." He replied swiftly, "Yes, apparently I've been trying to get in touch." The Empress's voice softened, a slight smile flashing. "Good. I hope this news will make her happy." Speaking of which, she didn't forget to remind him, "You should also build a relationship with Duke Eleanor. It would be a good way to bring the Eleanoras to our side." Johannes replied, swiftly like a machine, "Yes, Mother." The Empress suddenly called out, "Sarah." She immediately bowed her head. "Here." "Your Majesty." she suddenly ordered, "Bring Vivian Eleanor here," with the utmost respect. Sarah replied swiftly, "Yes, Your Majesty." The scene shifts to Oslon's mansion. Meanwhile, Vivian was taking a slow walk in the garden. She suddenly let out a long sigh. Vivian's face was pale, and she couldn't help but sigh. "Today is the informal holiday of the hunting party, but I didn't expect her to call for me. She said a doctor could cure tuberculosis, right? So, the moment for that part has arrived, the fake doctor chapter. This is the great scam of the century in the Empire's history. Even the original Vivian pinned her last hopes on this fake doctor. But when the truth was revealed, she went mad with despair, taking her anger out on the poor, innocent Iris, and even tried to stab her. But before tuberculosis could kill her, she shivered as she recalled the scene. Oslon did it. In other words, this is the last chapter where Vivian is still alive. Vivian couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This gives me the creeps. I know Oslon won't kill me now, but I still can't be sure. Just then, a hand reached out and touched her shoulder. Vivian reacted immediately, screaming in terror. Oslon called out urgently, "Vivian." He asked worriedly, "I called you, but you didn't answer. Did I scare you?" Oslon looked sorrowful. "That I'm sorry for visiting so suddenly. But I heard the Queen summoned you, so..." Vivian looked up, her eyes scrutinizing Oslon. He was worried, but if nothing had happened, she wouldn't normally be this gentle. She closed her eyes tightly, thinking, "For some reason, I feel a little uneasy. Of course, I'm still angry that he prepared such a proposal without asking for my opinion. But I don't hate him. Why is that? Is it because he's handsome? But considering everything I've been through, I can't forgive him." After a moment, Oslon called her name again, Vivian. He suddenly declared, "I will grant your every request." Oslon moved closer to Vivian, speaking urgently. "So, can you forgive me?" Vivian's eyes widened in surprise, never having imagined he would go this far. She mumbled with her head down, "Oslon, you..." Vivian's eyes lit up as she asked excitedly, "You said everything, right?" Vivian made a decision in her heart. Since Oslon was willing to go this far, I absolutely cannot let this opportunity pass. After all, having gone through so much trouble with Oslon, getting a little revenge is only natural. A thought echoed in her mind. Or maybe I should. Just then, Oslon revealed a sad expression, looking up at Vivian with tears in his eyes. Faced with this sight, her heart couldn't help but tremble. Goodness, he looked so pitiful. Vivian sighed wearily in her heart. "Every time I see his face, I soften up." Seeing this, she coughed lightly. "All right," Vivian said, feigning sternness. "Now, tell me exactly what you did wrong from beginning to end, without leaving out any details." Oslon answered hesitantly, "I almost embarrassed you. I'll propose properly next time." Hearing this, Vivian's expression turned to disappointment. She said coldly, "All my life, I've been tolerant of other people's gossip. Do you really not know why I'm angry?" Faced with this sudden question, his body practically froze. After a moment of silence, Oslon admitted frankly, "This is a matter between the two of us, yet I listen to others." He gently reached his hand out to her. "I wasn't thinking of you." Oslon's voice trembled. His gaze locked on Vivian. "I was a fool. You should have been the first one to hear about it." Vivian, almost lost in his gaze, replied absently, "That's right." Deep down, she thought, he must be very uncomfortable with this kind of talk, but he's doing a good job. Then, Vivian coldly shook off his hand. "But I still can't forgive you." She looked up with a provocative smile. "There are only 2 days left in the hunting competition, right? During that time, catch a beautiful animal for me. Then I'll forgive you." After saying this, Vivian showed a triumphant expression. Although Oslon was skilled, it would be impossible for him to do it in 2 days. This seemed like a good way to get back at him. He answered briefly without hesitation, "All right." Oslon's gaze followed Vivian, his hand on his chest, his voice gentle yet firm. "If it means earning your forgiveness, I am willing to give up that glorious victory." Faced with that constantly shining aura, she felt a faint sense of helplessness. Vivian chuckled lightly. "Aren't you getting a little ahead of yourself?" Oslon said wearily, "Then let me propose an alternative." He gave a wicked smile. According to the tradition of the hunting competition, Oslon suddenly proposed, "If I win, you'll give me a kiss, right?" Vivian repeated subconsciously, "Tradition?" She couldn't help but feel a little confused. He mentioned that the winner of the hunting competition brings honor to their lover and receives a kiss in front of everyone. He was supposedly asking for forgiveness, yet he shamelessly set such a condition. He must be very confident he can win. But winning in 2 days was impossible. Vivian sneered, "Deal." 2 days later, on the final day of the hunting competition, the crowd had fully gathered. People couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "This is truly extraordinary." The crowd stared at the bear, and one of them said, "That must weigh over 10,000 pounds. The Grand Duke is truly in a class of his own." The person asked in confusion, "He also caught 2 large white beasts a few days ago, right?" Another person quickly confirmed, "That's right." "Then it's obvious the winner of this hunting competition is." Just then, the sound of footsteps was heard in the distance. The crowd turned their gazes to Oslon, Grand Duke Astaroth. They began to cheer excitedly. "Congratulations, Your Grace. Amazing." On her side, Vivian lowered her head. "That I'm done for. No, it's too early to give up. Running away is my specialty, so if I run now." Just then, he suddenly shouted, "I wish to dedicate this honor to my one and only fiancée." With that, Oslon approached her. He lowered his voice and asked, "Do you forgive me now?" Seeing this, Vivian replied helplessly, "A promise is a promise." She blamed herself for being too short-sighted and complacent. Immediately after, Vivian stood on her tiptoes. "Let's get this over with." Oslon looked very happy. "All right." He suddenly gave a wicked smile and gestured. But Oslon looked at her helplessly. "Why are you pouting?" Vivian shouted in a low voice. "I have no choice. I've never done anything like this before, besides a peck on the cheek." She started to complain, and with so many people watching, if we don't do it right, there will be even more rumors. Suddenly, Oslon pulled Vivian in and gave her a deep kiss. His hand gently supported the back of her head. In that moment, Vivian's hands involuntarily went to his back. Amidst the cheers, the two seemed to share the same thought. This way, everyone will see that our engagement is very stable, and that's enough. But at this moment, Vivian couldn't help but wonder, why is my heart beating so fast? Seeing this, Oslon asked with concern, "Are you all right?" She replied shyly, Vivian turned her face away, thinking it's because of the festive atmosphere around us. From the Queen's assassination attempt to Oslon breaking the hunting record, the hunting competition, which had satisfied countless gossips, finally concluded amidst the cheers of the crowd. After the hunting competition ended, we returned to Blackford. I wanted to live a peaceful life and heal the wounds I received in the tomb. That's right, peace is what I seek. A while later, a group of people gathered around Vivian's desk. A young man reported quickly, "His Grace has ordered a complete replacement of the banquet hall's floor and walls." The man added excitedly, "He also arranged for the house's chandeliers and windows to be updated to the latest trends." The group took turns handing her papers. The questions piled up. "My lady, do you not like this item in the catalog?" Then, "My lady, may I suggest a unique decoration?" Seeing this, Vivian sighed in her heart. "Why do I have to deal with these hassles the moment I get back?" Ever since coming to the capital, because of my 18th birthday and coming-of-age ceremony, I haven't had a moment's rest. The scene shifts to outside the city. Jesus stared at the city gate where the crowd was gathered and gave a wicked smile. "It seems that lady is quite busy." Jesus said implicitly, "I have urgent business to discuss with her." He sighed, "Although many guests are visiting Blackford, it's very easy for me to sneak in." As he spoke, Jesus couldn't help but feel a little excited. "I wonder if she'll be able to recognize me this time." Back with Vivian, the man continued to ask, "My lady, these are all the finest imported goods from abroad. What do you think of this design?" She looked helplessly at the pile of documents in her hand. "This is a bit much." I was hoping to laugh it off, but it seems I have no choice. A thought flashed through Vivian's mind. It's time to play that game. A loud noise continuously echoed from the room, and Dylan reacted immediately. "My lady," he asked with concern, "are you all right, my lady? Shall I call a doctor?" "No," she said weakly, "I think I need to rest." Hearing this, Dylan immediately suggested, "Then I will tell the merchants to come back another day." Vivian screamed internally in protest. "They don't need to come back." As soon as the group left, she sighed in her heart. "Finally, I can breathe." Vivian stared blankly at the figure before her. "You are." Jesus bowed politely. "Hello, I am an employee from Miss Scarlet's shop." He admitted frankly, "I'm here to take measurements for the ordered corset." Dylan leaned in and whispered, "Shall I kick him out, my lady?" Vivian's gaze suddenly sharpened as she answered curtly, "Wait." Vivian showed a suspicious expression. "I've seen that pin before. That's the eye of truth that Jesus likes to wear, right? I saw it in the novel." Thinking this, she silently confirmed it. "That must be Jesus." Dylan immediately stepped forward. "Didn't you hear what the lady said?" My lady needs to rest. Get out. Seeing this, Vivian quickly interjected, wait. She stood up and explained, it's all right, Dylan. I was the one who called for him, so he can come upstairs with me. He looked worried, but seeing Vivian emphasize word by word, Miss Scarlet's shop has a long waiting list, so this is a small price to pay. Dylan bowed, yes, my lady. If you need anything, please call for me at once. Immediately after, the door slowly closed. She turned to look at Jesus. I didn't expect you to come here in person. Vivian narrowed her eyes, especially in this form. He curled his lips into a smile. The demonic energy in this house is giving me quite a headache. Jesus didn't forget to complain. The Grand Duke protects you as if you're some rare treasure. He turned around and said implicitly, besides me, what other mage could deceive him? As he spoke, Jesus leaned back in his chair. I thought you'd see through me right away. Vivian thought, still so annoying. She quickly got to the point. Anyway, since you're here, it means you've found a way to break the black magic, right? Jesus said in a heavy tone. It might take a little more time. I've run into an unexpected obstacle. Vivian exclaimed in surprise. What? I thought I hadn't caused you any trouble. He nodded slightly, his voice low, of course. But first, there's something I want to ask you. Jesus turned his head to look directly into her eyes. The demon Astaroth seems to be related to the black magic inside you. As he spoke, he probed, I want to trace its origin. Can you think of anything? Thoughts flooded Vivian's mind. The hexagram mark I saw on Oslon in his lion form is similar to mine, but it's not the mark described in the original story. It requires a connection between a human and a beast. Since I've never met that condition, it's impossible for me to have that mark. Jesus' voice still lingered in her ears. That magic circle is suppressing your tuberculosis. She thought, just as Jesus said, ever since I discovered this magic circle, my tuberculosis symptoms have greatly eased. If this isn't a coincidence, it means I won't die before Oslon does. At this thought, Vivian couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. If he dies, I'll die too. So, because the marks of two people are the same and their lives are linked, I shouldn't rule out this possibility. If this magic circle is that mark. I don't have enough information about this magic circle right now. It seems Jesus knows something, so I have to ask more. But I have to remain subtle while feigning indifference. After a moment of silence, she spoke slowly. I'm not even sure when this circle appeared. Vivian provoked calmly. You came all this way just to ask me this? I thought you were so confident. She showed a triumphant expression. Did that sting? Go on, reveal everything you know. Unexpectedly, Jesus looked unfazed. It's disappointing that you can't think of anything. He suddenly delivered a shocking piece of news. If that's the case, then you probably also don't know that the demon Astaroth has colluded with the Eleanor family. Her eyes widened in surprise. What? Jesus added calmly. I told you the magic circle on you is incomplete, right? He said with a laugh. The reason is your bloodline. A pure Eleanor bloodline prevents the black magic from taking over. Jesus emphasized every word heavily, because two different types of black magic cannot coexist harmoniously at the same time. The one cast later will be unable to complete. In that instant, Vivian's mind was buzzing. Mother is a direct descendant of Eleanor, and father is from a branch family, but this wasn't written in the novel. This is too confusing. I wanted to provoke Jesus, but it backfired. She looked at Jesus with dissatisfaction. What a pain. That's right. I'll let my fist do the talking. At the same time, a knock came from inside. Vivian turned her head in surprise. Oslon. She hurriedly gestured to Jesus. Oslon's here, quick, hide. Then, he suddenly wrapped a rope around Vivian's waist. At the same time, Oslon quickly walked in. I'm here, Vivian. He narrowed his eyes, looking inside the room, and asked, how are you feeling? Oslon raised an eyebrow slightly. Dylan said you were coughing badly just now. Just then, he saw Jesus measuring her waist. He lowered his voice and said, I sense him coming because of the demonic energy in the house. Don't worry, I'll make sure he doesn't suspect anything. Oslon approached and asked sternly, you're the shop assistant. What are you muttering about? Jesus chirped amiably, her measurements. I just finished. At this, Oslon looked around. I knew an assistant was coming, but wasn't it supposed to be a woman? He asked coldly, how old are you? Jesus answered honestly, I'm 16, your grace. Oslon continued his interrogation. What's your name? He answered curtly, Miguel. Hearing this, He showed a displeased expression. Is your shop so short-staffed that you'd send a child to take a lady's measurements? Jesus replied with an innocent expression. Miss Scarlet has many assistants, but I'm the one assigned to take measurements specifically for noble ladies. As he spoke, he smiled. They prefer cute and charming boys like me. It's a shop secret. On her side, Vivian couldn't help but nod in agreement. That's right. She was startled and turned to look at him. No, wait, why is he so good at acting and making up stories? Vivian observed him quietly. Oslon didn't look too pleased either. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly with her thoughts. In that moment, Vivian couldn't help but feel a little worried. He knows it's Jesus.